All right, we got Washington as the number 2 seed versus Boston, the number 3 seed. I predicted Washington in 7. Boston have actually won in 5, which would have been a surprise to me if I didn't see what happened throughout this series. So, game 1, Washington won 3-2 in overtime. Wilson with the first goal. That hurt as a Rangers fan. I was pretty upset. Vanacek got hurt stretching on a goal from DeBrusk, which sucks because Vanacek was playing very good. Craig Anderson filled in with his first playoff appearance since 2017, which is 4 years ago. That's a long time. Taylor Hall looked really good early. Dylan scores. Ovi celebrated as if it was his, which is a little bit of foreshadowing for later on. I think he was not a very good role model this series, I don't think, but Ritchie scores on an odd deflection off his body. 2-2 going into the third. Goes to overtime. Oshie shoots, deflected by Dowd on a bad-handled shot by Rask, in my opinion, less than 4 minutes in. So far, Rask looked a bit jittery, and Anderson played really good in his first playoff appearance in a while. But yeah, 1-0 Washington series. Game 2, Boston wins 4-3 in overtime again. Except Boston wins, I guess. And so Coyle to DeBrusk in a wraparound is a pretty easy goal. Oshie deflects a shot by Ovi, and he scores. Bergeron scores from the slot. Hathaway on an odd deflection from Orlov through Rask's legs, which was a weird one. And then Hathaway scores from Orlov again, 2-on-1. So, I'll get to this later, but Hathaway, Dowd, and Orlov all had a really good series. I liked all three of them. They were good depth team play. It was good. The bottom 6 for Washington played good all series. Get to the problems in a bit, though. So, Hall ties it with under 3 minutes left in the third. That feels bad if you're a Washington fan. They just can't hold a lead ever, it feels like. It was mad scramble in the crease. 9 of the 10 skaters on the ice were in the crease at some point during that goal. Hall eventually got that, though. And then in overtime, Grzelcyk with amazing pass to Marchand wins it in 39 seconds. That's a Bruins record for the fastest overtime goal. Beats Bobby Orr's record, I think. So, Rask and Anderson both played well. It seemed like a good matchup, and at this point, it seemed like a very good, long series was going to happen. Boston would prove to be not the case. So, Game 3, Boston wins it 3-2 in double overtime this time. So this marks the 4th overtime period in only 3 games. This series is looking really tight. It's looking like a very hard-fought series so far, until you see what happens later on. So, Ovi scores for Mantha. Hall answers with a highlight reel goal for himself. Amazing goal. I would never expect Hall to break out in the playoffs like he did, but who would have thought that maybe a good player gets a little bit better when he makes the playoffs for the first time in forever? So, Hathaway to Dowd scores. This is going to be a trend. Marchand ties it with 8 minutes left on a beautiful bat out of the air shot. It was pretty sweet. So another late tying goal for Boston. That hurts already. Goes to double overtime. Pastrnak hooked on a breakaway. No call. Should have been a penalty shot, in my opinion. Ref didn't call it. I feel like they just want to swallow the whistles for double overtime in the playoffs. And then, I'm glad Boston won, but not in the way they did. Craig Smith scores on just a awful miscommunication between Samsonov and Schultz. That should never happen. It should never go in like that. It was a bad goal. I could not watch the replay again. It was terrible. That might be the turning point in the series, and by might be, I mean it is, because Ovechkin breaks his stick over the bench and cusses out either Samsonov or Schultz afterwards. That's a very great captain you want on your team, I'll tell you that much. Oh golly gee. So, Samsonov started that game, which was surprising to me. He played well, but it led to probably the biggest blunder in Caps history, I think. That that might spiral them into a bit of a retool or a rebuild kind of thing. I don't know what that means for them. That might be bad for this offseason. Rask held his ground. He played well. Didn't really let in any bad goals that game. So, Game 4. Boston wins this one 4-1. This is the first multi-goal, non-overtime win of the series, and you can feel that Boston's pulling away with it a bit. Wilson hit a bar. Taylor Hall accidentally kicks Samsonov in between the legs on a breakaway, which doesn't happen very often. He just clipped him with his skate to the inner thigh, I think. Shook him up a bit, but he seemed fine. So, Marchand deflects a Pastrnak shot, 1-0. And then halfway through the game, Washington only had 5 shots total, which is a bit of a bad stat. They sucked. They just couldn't do anything for so long. So, Pastrnak scores again on the exact same play, except he gets the goal this time. Marchand didn't deflect it. Kyle scores after a rebound off a DeBrusque breakaway. Weird goal, kind of awkward. I don't blame the goalie for that at all. And then Ovi scores on one of his famous clap bombs, but his stick breaks and it actually is going probably 5 feet wide, and it banks off the defender's skate and in. It was a really awkward goal. He celebrated like he's a god. He isn't. I feel bad, but he's not the same Ovi that can overpower goalies. His slap shot from the top of the circle has not worked this series, and it hasn't for a few years now, and it's kind of getting old, and it's not good to have that as your main scoring threat, I guess. I don't know. The league's kind of just developing. The goalies are getting, better at hockey. Sometimes when a good team realizes you have one good player, they just go oh, you know what? Maybe we'll cover that one player. That's the same reason why McDavid can't win a playoff round. They just cover him. The defense are getting better. You need to just do everything yourself incredibly perfect if you want to beat them. I don't know. So they just cannot bounce back from Ovi freaking out the game earlier. Game 5, Boston wins this 3-2. I feel like Washington deserved to win this one, but Samsonov robs Wagner on a one-timer. Samsonov played really good this whole series except that one blunder, I feel like. Wilson took a stupid penalty for cross-checking, which par for the course for him. Rask one-timer saving Eller. Washington playing really well but can't break through Rask. Pastrnak with a highlight reel goal. Bergeron scores from far out. Samsonov probably should have stopped it. It was pretty bad. And then Sheary scores on a rebound 11 seconds into the third. But Bergeron ices it with 7 minutes left on a really bad turnover. Huge goal for Eller late. Huge save Samsonov, but it proves to be too little. Boston wins in 5. So what does it mean? So for the Caps, is Ovi unfit as a captain? Their future's uncertain. That's 3 straight first-round exits as a higher seed. So 2019 versus the second wild card in the Hurricanes that barely squeaked into the playoffs. That was a Game 7 blunder. 2020, they lost to the play-in winner Islanders in 6, I believe. And then this year, they lost to the third seed Bruins. The Bruins this year were probably the best of the 3 teams to lose against, I think. If not, maybe the Islanders. But Ovi's definitely getting predictable. They need a better option. They need maybe a second go-to guy. Backstrom wasn't really doing much this series, it didn't feel like. Mantha didn't do as much as he could have. Just the top 6 didn't do anything. For the Bruins, oh my, the big trade line acquisition in Taylor Hall paid off beautifully. Step 1 was making the playoffs. Step 2 is winning. And they are still proving to be a competing team. They needed a good year after their early exit last year against Tampa. Actually, not really early. It was second round, but they needed a bounce back. They didn't do much against Tampa that I was happy about. So this is good for them. They should be good for another year or 2, maybe 3 if they're lucky. Some pros and cons for each team. Washington's goalie was very stellar for the most part. all three goalies played well. They should not have any problems with that in the future. Samsonov seems to be like the number one guy. Vanacek looks like a good backup soon for him. They might both be just like a 1A, 1B type, like just alternating games. I don't see either as the clear cut right now. They're both playing really well. Washington's depth guys on like the fourth line and the third line played really well. Like Dowd, Orlov, and Hathaway, amazing series. Like I'll give you guys a round of applause for that. The cons is Ovi obviously getting predictable. His shooting percentage was very low. The top guys underperformed. Bad leadership. Core players are getting older. They're aging. You can't stop age. They don't have people to replace Ovi. They don't have people to replace Backstrom. They're going to be in a really bad situation very, very quick. This seems to be like similar to what Detroit had, I guess. Like where they had all these good players for so long and then they just couldn't find a gap to fill them and they just sort of like went to the bottom of the barrel. But I would not expect Washington to be in contention for much longer. This series really scares me with them. I don't know. In Boston, this is very different because Taylor Hall was a huge X factor. He played amazing. Bergeron's still a good captain. I feel like he's very, very healthy and good still. Marchand and Pasternak keep goals flowing. And Rask is still at an elite level. I feel like Boston's window is not quite closed. They still have another 2 to 3 years left. The cons are that the core is aging fast. They are not the team they once were. They're closer to a rebuild than most people think, but there's no clear replacement for the top players as well. Boston and Washington both seem like teams that need to win now. Not later. They don't have a later. They have maybe 2 years left each. And then teams like the Rangers or the Islanders or the Panthers or the Coyotes or something is going to pop up. Even like the Canucks or the Flames could get better. Like there's the Senators. There's more teams getting better right now. And they just are on this very, very gradual decrease, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't feel like there's any quick fix for either of them. They're going to need some draft picks. They're going to need to make some trades. They're going to need to go through a rebuild soon, or they are going to pull a Detroit and are going to be a bottom feeder for a few years. So that's the series between Boston and Washington. There's a few elimination games tonight. I don't know if I'll be able to upload them tonight. I might be able to tomorrow or the day after. But for now, that's round one recap for Boston, Washington. Boston's moving on, and we'll see who wins the Pittsburgh Islanders series. That one's a lot closer, I think. So let me know how I did. This is a bit of a longer one, but I wanted to talk about this. So let me know how I did. Hit the like button, subscribe, I guess, if you want to hear my voice more. And yeah, I'll upload whenever somebody gets eliminated, I guess, and I'll do previews for round 2. So have a good one, guys, and that's all.